It is time for Pete and I to begin to plan our upcoming trips for this summer, and everything is so expensive, we really are not sure what we can afford to do. Are you in the same boat? We know what we want to do, but we're not sure what we can afford to do. So we need to prioritize what is most important for us. This summer, we're making a budget, we're going to stick with it, and we are going to be tracking our expenses along the way. We want to be frugal, but not cheap. And we want to budget conservatively so by the end of the summer, we don't have any unpleasant surprises. We have realized that fuel, food, and campsite costs are actually the most expensive items on our RV trips. If we're doing activity-heavy trips, those excursions can be very expensive too. Right now, we're actually just doing some pre-planning so that we can really consider our budget. After that, we're going to be making final travel plans and all of our reservations. I was thinking that if you're in the same situation, that you might appreciate some of the things that we're doing to try to save money on our RV travels this summer. There are 5 tips I'd like to share with you that are helping us to make affordable travel plans without sacrificing any of the fun. So here we go. Number 1, we're going to try to plan our travel route and be really wise about it. Obviously, traveling is a lot more expensive than if you're just sitting in one location for the entire summer. Like, we saved a lot of money last summer when we were camp hosts on the Rim and we didn't go anywhere. This summer, hopefully, we're going to be able to do some traveling, and we know that's going to be a lot more expensive. That means we might consider making travel plans where we're doing less miles between each stop and maybe doing like less overall miles over the entire summer. That way we're saving wear and tear on our vehicle and also the real hard cost of fuel. If we're not camping in the mountains, we want to avoid traveling through mountain grades because mountain grades are they're so hard on your vehicle, but they're really bad on gas mileage. So if we don't have to cross mountain passes, we're going to try to avoid those. We're also going to avoid toll roads. And that is a really simple thing for us to do because we're traveling mostly in the, southwest part of the country. So we don't really have a ton of toll roads. When we do come across them every once in a while, we try to avoid them at all costs. Unless avoiding it means that we're going to be going way far out of our way and we're going to be spending a lot more money in gas. And so it's just if it's a much shorter and more efficient travel route to pay the toll, oftentimes the toll will pay for itself in the gas fuel savings. One thing that Pete is really good about doing is keeping an eye on our tire pressures. And that is a really good thing to do for 2 reasons. Number 1, if your tires are properly inflated, you're going to get way better gas mileage. But number 2 is, I think, could even save you a whole lot more money, and that is avoiding blowouts. Because when you have a tire blowout, a lot of times you are paying for something maybe like tow expenses, but also all of the repairs that are going to be required on your vehicle because when a tire blows out, it's not usually just the tire. It usually takes some other kind of structure with it. So those can become really expensive. You want to avoid those at all costs. The other thing that we always do, this is nothing new for us, we travel slower. If there is a 75 posted speed limit on an interstate, we are never traveling that fast. I think it's a safety thing, but it's also a gas saving thing. We are going to be not causing any kind of a dangerous situation by going way too slow. But we are going to be staying with the pack of people that are traveling on the slower end and not being like part of the group of the speed demons that are saying, how fast they can go without getting pulled over. Once we're at a destination, we're going to try to avoid driving our vehicle as much as possible. So if we need to go in town, let's say, and we want to go see some kind of an attraction, or we need to pick up groceries, or we need to pick up fuel or something like that, what we're going to do is we're going to schedule all of that to happen in one day. So it's one trip out, one trip back, and we're not going back and forth and adding miles to our vehicle and also consuming a lot of gas doing that. Route planning is also something that you might want to consider as a cost-saving measure when it comes to your fuel. So you can get on free apps like Gas Buddy and you know exactly how much the fuel is going to be along your entire travel route. If you can avoid like touristy areas where everything, including fuel, is a whole lot more expensive, if you don't have to travel through those kinds of places, then you don't want to, or you want to make sure that you're skipping those and you're not having to stop for gas, and planning where your gas stops are going to be so that you're taking advantage of the lowest prices that you can find. When we are camping in an area and we're not in a real touristy area, oftentimes the smaller gas stations in those areas have way better fuel rates than if you are stopping at a truck stop. So when we're camped somewhere and we are unhooked and we are not, trying to figure out if our tow vehicle and the trailer can maneuver around a smaller gas station, we're going to try to avoid that. And anytime that we're unhooked, if we have the ability to fill up and top off our tank with the best price around, we're going to do that. So we have access to those places when we aren't towing, because we don't have to worry about the maneuvering space in those smaller gas stations that often have better rates. Don't forget about your fuel loyalty programs options that are out there. So there's a lot of people that travel like full time, and they have lots of different programs that they're involved with especially the truck stops that have rewards programs like Flying J and Loves and those kinds of places. But also if you are a frequent grocery shopper, that shops at a place where they also have discounts on fuel with the more that you spend in groceries, that's a great option. So here in Arizona, we have Fry's. I know across the country that chain is called Kroger, and it has a bunch of different names depending on where you are in the country, but that loyalty card works at any one of their stores across the country, and you're accumulating points wherever you go. So not only can you clip your digital coupons and save money on your food, then you're also accumulating gas points. Tip number 2 is to manage your camping costs. We prefer boondocking compared to being in a crowded RV park. So we recommend boondocking as much as possible. I can't even count how much money we have saved over the years as boondockers. And we boondock because we like the beautiful scenery, we like the extra space that we get between us and our neighbors, but we also really love that it's so good on the wallet. It's like free or super cheap. We've been doing it for so long, and we kind of have it down like a science. Take advantage of all of the options that you have with like BLM land. The Bureau of Land Management has great options for free camping, and then also the National Forests have some really great options. Any other kind of dispersed camping that you can do on public land for free is a great idea to try to save money. We did a video last summer when we were up at the Rim for the entire summer, and I'm going to show you in that video how we set up our campsite, and we kind of have it down like a science, and it really works for us. So I want to share that with you. And we also have other videos that were about like how to keep mice out of your rigs and stuff like that, and that mice can happen anywhere, right? So it's not just if you're boondocking. So I'll leave that in the description below too. So if you do decide to stay in one location instead of doing a whole lot of traveling, or do minimal traveling and stay in places for longer periods of time, the longer you're somewhere, the more likely you are to have mice try to move in with you, and you don't want that. So that video is all about preventing mice from getting into your rig, and also what to do if you didn't prevent them, they came anyway, how you can get rid of them. So I'll leave a link for that too. When you're traveling on your travel route and you're going from one place to another and you can't do it in one day, another great option is to do a free overnight camp spot, which might be like at a Walmart or a Cracker Barrel or those kinds of places. Casinos oftentimes have free camping or super cheap camping. So those are great options when you're just doing travel days and you're not really doing a setup anywhere, and you're just kind of, need to rest for the night, and then you're going to be traveling some more the next day. Pete and I did a video on how we didn't like our 1 year membership with the Thousand Trails camping membership. And it was just because it wasn't a good fit for us. I'll leave a link in the description below to that video so that you can see why we thought the way that we thought. But we totally understand that those kinds of places are great for other people that are in different situations and have different needs and desires. So don't forget that there's a whole lot of different kinds of camping memberships out there. Thousand Trails is just one of them, but if you can save money on camping destinations because you are getting a lower cost to stay there because you're going through a membership, that's a great option. Check out the membership programs, Passport America, Harvest Hose, Boondockers Welcome, those kinds of things. Check those out. But here's my caution to you. Those memberships almost always have some kind of significant upfront fee. So make sure that you're going to be using it enough that you're going to actually offset the membership fee, and in the long run you're really going to save money on your camping fees, because if you buy something and you don't use it enough, it may not pay for itself. Because we're boondockers, we don't go to a lot of RV parks. Some of the private RV parks across the country can be absolutely stunning. Some of them are super family friendly and have, like water parks in them. A lot of the really nice RV parks that are targeted towards just adults will have spas and swimming pools and tennis courts and pickleball courts and just a ton of activities. So you're paying for those activities and amenities. If you don't use those, then it might not be a great option. You just kind of have to know what kind of trip you want to do and what kind of activities and what you want to experience while you're out there on your trips. Remember, we're trying to be frugal, not cheap. We're trying to do the things that we want and still be able to afford them on our budget. So the idea is to figure out exactly what you want and figure out what you're willing to forego in order to be able to afford the thing that you really want. I know that nobody wants to go to Joshua Tree National Park in the middle of summer because it's well over 100 degrees. It's super, super hot. So that's not what I'm going to be talking about here. But what I am going to be talking about is thinking about going to places that are in the off season. So more like the shoulder season, not like the totally miserable season. And you will find that you'll be able to get better rates at those places when they're off season or shoulder season and they're not as busy. And some of the federal facilities might not actually have a discounted rate when it's off season, but in those situations you can usually find much better camp spots and get the ones that are kind of like the top of the line camp spots that you wouldn't be able to get in the peak season when like everybody and their brother wants to be there. You might wonder why I'm going to even say this next thing, but conserving water can save you money. And the reason that I'm saying that's a savings in camping costs is this, especially if you're boondocking and you're actually having to go buy water somewhere. Well, when you're paying for water, and not only are you paying for water, but you're also filling up your gray tank, so you're going to have to dump more frequently when you're using more water. So the cost of purchasing the water itself and then the cost of disposing the wastewater that comes from that, you'll save money if you conserve water from the outset. And when it comes to where you're going to be dumping your black and your gray tanks, Sandy Dumps and iOverlander are a couple of apps that will indicate different places and facilities that you can actually dump for free or sometimes for a small fee. Tip number 3, cook your own meals. Yeah, that one's not a big surprise, right? I mean, we are camping for foodies after all. On travel days, I like to pack snacks and meals so that we are not having to either go to a restaurant or buy the pricey stuff when you're at a gas station that's got, a convenience store located with it, and spending a whole bunch of money on junk food that isn't good for you. It's not healthy, and it makes you feel kind of sick after you eat it, especially if you're eating stuff with too much sugar and driving and you're like, oh, my belly's not feeling good. Anyway, my point is that by a little bit of pre-planning, you're going to eat healthier and you're going to save a lot of money when on your travel days. The other way to save money on your food bill is to stock up when you're in areas where you can buy in bulk, like at a Costco or a Sam's Club. You know how much I love Costco. Well, if your trip is long enough and you're actually going to have to replenish on groceries, you might want to think about that, because once you get into those smaller towns where they're kind of remote and they're really cool places to go visit, oftentimes the groceries there are a lot more expensive because they don't go through as much volume, and the cost of transportation of restocking those grocery stores is more expensive, so they pass that on to the consumer. So you want to try to avoid buying that really expensive groceries by doing some pre-planning and buying up in bulk as much as you can. And lastly, when it comes to food, avoiding pricey restaurants is totally always my goal. Very seldom do we actually go out to eat, but when we do, I want it to be really special and really delicious and something that I can't make at home and I don't feel like we got ripped off. Pete and I are both the same way about that. So not only when you go to a restaurant are you paying for the food, but you also, if you decide that you want a glass of wine or a cocktail or something like that, those are way more pricey than what you could do by opening a bottle and having a glass of wine at home yourself. But in addition to those expenses, it's also a lot more expensive because you are having tax and tip that you're dealing with on top of your bill. So obviously it's a lot cheaper to eat at home than it is eating out. I've got tons of meal ideas for you. So if you're thinking that you just don't know what you want to cook, I'm going to leave a link in the description below to a whole lot of options that'll help you out and help you with some menu planning too. Tip number 4 is to set a budget on your activities. Activities can really make or break a trip. And I know that if you're going somewhere and you really have to go see the thing that you went there for, you want to do that. Definitely do that. But make sure that it's in your budget. It's best to stick with no cost or low cost attractions, because attractions can get super expensive. So for example, if you've got the ability to, let's say, take a tour with a tour guide versus doing a little bit of research and doing a self-guided tour, you can usually save a lot of money by doing that self-guided tour. And of course, when you're camping, in America the Beautiful Pass is always a great idea when you're visiting all of our federal facilities, but also there's so much to do when you go to a national park that costs you absolutely no money. So all of the hikes, for example, all of the, they usually have some kind of a little museum and some kind of a movie about how that national park came to be, and artists in residence have things. So there's a lot of things that are just automatically included there at no additional cost. It's those extra things where it's a kayak down the whitewater rivers or something in the area that is going to cost you an arm and a leg. I think one of the easiest ways to save money when it comes to attractions and excursions and things like that is to avoid buying things like souvenirs. I know it's really fun to have a t-shirt or a hat or whatever from the place that you went to visit. You've seen me in my Yosemite t-shirts and stuff like that. It's not like I say, hey, don't ever do that, but do it wisely. And if that's just an really easy way to save money in a time where you're kind of really trying to make every dollar go farther. So instead of capturing the memory with a t-shirt, or a mug or a hat or something like that, take photos and do a journal of your trip. And obviously digital photos cost you nothing nowadays. It's a great way to do it. And if you want something that you don't have to do yourself, but you actually want to buy something in the gift shop, think about just a cheap postcard. They're fun, they're cute, they're memorable. Tip number 5 is DIY maintenance and repairs. Not only is it expensive for them to do that, but it just seems like every place is so backed up and you're on somebody else's schedule and all that stuff. So just take your time, do it ahead of time. Don't wait till the last minute, get it done yourself, and you're in good shape. The other thing I want to say is don't put something off, because if you have a little maintenance problem and you start to have some kind of a small issue, it can easily grow fast into a big, expensive issue. You don't want to be dealing with broken down vehicles while you're on your trip. You want to just have a good time and enjoy your trip. And if you put off little maintenance things, they can often become very much more expensive in the long run because you let a small issue turn into a really big problem. We are always looking for additional tips. So if you have ideas that I didn't cover just now, please leave a comment below, because we are looking to expand our, horizons, and we're not thinking that we know it all, because we certainly don't. So I love when we can share information back and forth. I love sharing what works for us, but I also love hearing about what is working for you. And oftentimes that helps us to modify what we're doing and make it even better. So please leave a comment and let us know what is working for you. If you have any questions or suggestions or whatever, we want to hear from you. Talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.